In the 1950s, after World War II, many war brides of American men immigrated to the U.S. Fall 7 Times, Get Up 8, The Japanese War Brides is a documentary that follows 3 Japanese women who did just that. Their recollections are further refracted through the eyes of their Japanese American daughters, a photojournalist, a newspaper editor, and a freelance journalist. Personal photographs and visuals from U.S. archival sources help bring to life this fascinating but little-known episode in U.S. history. 2 of the daughters reside in the Washington area. The third is a native of Silver Spring, Maryland. I have 2 of the daughters, co-directors Kathryn Tolbert and Kasmauski, here with me in the studio. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
This is my pleasure. I really enjoyed the film, but could you just give the audience kind of a synopsis of what the film is about?
Okay, the film is the story of 3 mothers and 3 daughters. And the daughter is sitting with her mother or with her mother, asking questions and encouraging her mother to be honest about what her experience was marrying an American serviceman after the end of World War II and coming to this country. And
I think it's really a film about us exploring our own roots. Where do we come from? Until I met Kathryn and Lucy, I didn't even know there were other people like me that existed. Which you know, like the big question is, what are you? You know, so
right.
It's like, what are you? You know, okay. And to say you're half Japanese doesn't mean anything to anybody. You know, so I think most of my life was trying to find out who I was, who this person was, who was my mother, where she came from, why did she marry my father, who was technically the enemy, until, well, it was of course during occupation when they met, but, you know, their families had fought each other, and so it was just really a pleasure to run into Lucy when I was in Japan doing a Japanese woman's story, and then Kathryn, and we all realized we had similar experiences growing up and how we related to our mother. It was a classic sort of immigration experience, but in some ways it was also about dealing with a woman, our mothers, who was raised in old-style Japan in child rearing, and then sort of translating that into modern, you know, modern America, meaning the 1950s and 60s, and how they raised their children in the United States. And there was, of course, a lot of, we had to do a lot of self-assessing about that, and then part of it, that's our part, and then for our mother's part, it was pretty much their memories of why they married, their memories of early Japan, living in Japan, but also why they married, who they did, and then their experiences coming to the United States. So for them, it's more like reliving a memory of their lives.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things, I guess, how did you all what was it like? Can you take me to the coffee shop where you all sat together and were like, you know what, let's do a documentary about this?
It literally was.
Well, it was interesting because we knew each other professionally, really, because we all worked on Japan at one time. And I had been working in Japan as a correspondent for a number of years, and so as Lucy and Karen traveled there on assignment. And so we had this professional connection, and we knew we had this shared personal background, but we didn't really explore it, you know, that much. It was like, yeah, we all have Japanese mothers, and what does that mean? Then my mother has always wanted to tell her story, and I had thought many years ago that I might try to do a book about it, but it got put aside. And then all of a sudden Lucy and Karen say, let's do a documentary film. And this is about, what, 4 years ago already?
Yeah.
And we met in a coffee shop, and none of us knew anything about filmmaking.
Oh, wow.
Never done a film.
Never done a film.
And so we started having these meetings, and we'd do Skype calls with Lucy, and we actually tried to create our own trailer, and it was really bad. But when it started to happen, it happened really fast. I mean, if you think about it, a little more than a year ago, in the fall of 2014, we started to fundraise.
We did our Kickstarter in
Really?
the fall of 2014.
Yeah,
Wow.
September 15th or 16th to October 16th of 2014 was our fundraising.
Amazing.
And then less than a year later, the film was completed and being premiered on the BBC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you all a question, because that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about the film is how you all took archival footage, right? And honestly, I want to get into this in a second. It's a love letter to your mothers, right? And in many ways, it's just kind of saying, hey, that's how I viewed it,
Well, I'm
because
glad
it's
you
such a
did.
personal, intimate, you know, I mean, it was beautifully told. But mixing that archival footage, you see a totally different side of America,
Right.
you know, where everything is so, there's a shot where there's a GI and he has this mic and he's talking about, you know, what's the hardest thing about, you know, assimilating these Japanese brides, and it just feels so
50-ish.
yes. Could you talk about, like, where did you guys find the
Okay,
footage?
Yeah, I found the footage. When we had an idea of what we wanted to do, we were trying to do our own trailer. And the whole point of this initially was to do a short 5-minute film in order to get funding to do a longer film, like an hour-long film. That was the initial idea of it, because we really thought that this is such a little-known part of American history, and that we really were looking for more of a museum exhibit or something to put into a museum. Not necessarily our mothers, but you know, the idea of collecting other interviews and pictures, which actually Kathryn is doing right now on a grant that she's gotten from Vassar College. So we were thinking, okay, what do we need to make this trailer to appeal to funders? So we thought, okay, historic footage. So I went into the National Archive, which is this amazing resource here in the DC area, and started looking at war brides, World War II. And I'm a visual storyteller anyway. I worked for National Geographic, so doing long-form storytelling with imagery is not that difficult for me, because it's something that that's what I've been doing most of my life. So I was in my head thinking, okay, if we have to tell the story, what kind of images do we need to back it? You know, and so we went through all that and spent all day looking at these amazing reels. Some of them were like this big, and you're just cranking them like that, right? You know, and it was just really fun to do it. And I took videos of those reels, which is what you do, I guess, at the National Archive, and then I dropped them on Dropbox to Lucy and Kathryn, and we looked at them. And did we include any of those in the trailer at all?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay. But then when we started to work with Blue Chalk, we basically did most of that historical work for them. So that saved the time. We already had all those copies of the films that we thought would be useful to tell the story that we could just hand over to them. So that's what helped expedite the making of this film. You know, we had already in our heads figured out how we want this to roll, sort of thing. You know, so.
How did your moms feel about the documentary when they watched the documentary? She didn't like it?
No, there's no comment.
Really?
Yeah, you're talking about Japanese moms that were raised in the 1940s and 30s. No comment.
Wow.
My mother was pretty honest, I thought. And, you know, when she goes on and she's complaining about having 4 kids.
Right.
And I turned to her and I said, well, how do you think that makes the younger two feel?
I was looking at you like, oh my gosh, she's saying that in front of her daughter.
I know. And she said,
We're used to it.
But they're not here. They're not here. I said, excuse me, you just said it on film.
Right.
You know, doesn't register.
Doesn't register.
Doesn't
Yeah.
register. No.
No.
So, you know, my mother, she hasn't said anything qualitatively about the film. She seems to be satisfied that she got a chance to tell her story, which is what she's always wanted to do.
Okay. All right, so really quickly before we wrap out, obviously you guys are going to be showing the film at the Rosebud Film Festival this year. You said it was on BBC. Is it showing any other
Well,
places
the
as
BBC did an abridged version.
Okay.
So it's a shortened version, and they kind of chopped it up into 2. And so they showed it on the 70th anniversary of the end of the war in the Pacific.
And they showed it on Christmas Day, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, that was shocking.
So it's gotten us some good attention, but it is a slightly shortened version, and so to see it as one 26-minute film.
Yeah.
Rosebud.
Okay. Oh, man, I wish I could talk to you guys about this more. I mean, like I said, I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought it just showed how one thing can affect generations, right? Just your mom's coming here, and then that effect that it had on them and their family and how they did kind of grow up. And I think one of the moms was saying that just the fact that she doesn't really know the difference, you know, so that heritage and the history and then how that affects you all. I think it's a beautiful film. So.
Yeah, thank you. And what we found surprising to us was how it actually translates beyond just that Japanese-American experience. We've had so many people who, you know, will be talking to us and they're literally weeping from seeing the film because it touches on that common experience of what you said, you know, your parent and what decisions they've made and how that affected your life. And we found that most of the people who were interested in this film were actually children of war brides, children of immigrants. Yeah. I mean, and they're the ones who probably have the time to self-assess what's going on, whereas the parents are so busy surviving that they don't even think about what they just did or what they've been doing. Whereas the children are the ones who can sit back, plus they're also getting the consequences of hardcore parenting. You know? And so they are able to sit back and self-assess themselves and self-assess their lives and wondering, you know, again, what kind of decisions my mother had made or my father had made and how that impacted all of us, you know, from generations to come. And the other thing that I just want to end this in light of all this trouble that we've been having right now with various things in the news, what I love about this film is that it shows how people can forget and forgive. And they can, people used to be enemies. In this film, these women represent that. And I said it in the film and I'll say it here, it's the best of the human condition where they can forget, or not forget, but forgive people who actually tried to kill them, you know, and then come together and form a new life together with these people, both on the male side and on the female side. It was both the fathers and the mothers both. And I think that's just a great a tribute to these women and men who married them, you know, that they were able to do that. Because this was the 1950s. We're not talking about the modern 2015. We're talking about, you know, way back then when it was still a somewhat racist society that we lived in. I mean, my parents were not legally married in the state of Virginia when they came over.
Wow.
You know, so luckily that got kicked off the side, but.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I wish we had more time to talk, but the film is obviously going to be playing at Rosebud, and so I'll see you guys there.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.